welcome. Thank you for that. We'd like to welcome Rev Ros, all the way from New Zealand. Ros has been an amazing teacher and mentor to me and continues to be. She's always got an interesting message for us. The title of the message today is Order, the Organising Power of the Universe. Would you please make her feel welcome?
Thank you. Yeah, order. I mean, we know this is the first law of the universe, don't we? The fact that we've got things that we can count on. Sunrise this morning, I think here was at 7:38. So we didn't have to wait around and see, oh, it's a bit late today. It happens exactly. And sunset, it's going to be 5:14. So these things that we can totally rely on. Organizing principle, organizing power of the universe. Now, we are created in the same image and likeness, so we have the same ability to organize ourselves and have the results that we want. In William Walsh's book, The 12 Gifts from God, he says, if your affairs are out of order, your thinking is out of order. If your body is out of order, your emotions are out of order. And it reminded me of last year about this time, actually a bit earlier than this time. I woke up one morning with an excruciating pain in my back, right around, and felt like, in fact, I was in some kind of vice grip. And it was so painful that John took me to emergency medical people. And they've done all sorts of investigations and put me under scans and MRIs and all sorts of things. Well, there was no physical thing, it seemed, that was going on. So I was looking at this. If your body is out of order, your emotions are out of order. So I was pondering about what that could be about. And at that time, I was also traveling to the US for my graduation. So the best we could do at the time was the doctor gave me these very high-powered painkillers, which didn't actually do much, didn't actually help a lot. But when I arrived in the US, I was picked up by one of my peers, and she said, oh, I'll take you to someone who I know you will help. In fact, she took me to two different what you might call psychic healers. And they both did some work with me, and they both came up with the same message. Someone has got their hooks into you. Oh, wow, someone has got their hook. So it was down on my sort of left side here, right low. And um, so someone's got their hooks into me. And immediately somebody came to mind. I had just taken over, before I went to the US for that trip, I had just taken over a leadership role here in the village that I live in, because our chairperson had resigned. And there was our first meeting before our first committee meeting that I was chairing. The person in the village who had been most vocal, in fact, the chairperson who had just left, said that she had over 1,000 emails from this woman. I was thinking, oh boy, 1,000 emails. This is something to look forward to. Not. And indeed, before my first meeting with them, this woman had sent through probably about a 7-page email with listing all the things that we were doing wrong. It was a barrage of stuff. So I thought, wow, I guess I'm carrying that with me in my body. And I feel like, yeah, someone's got their hooks into me. And not just me, but other people in the village. And as I've worked with this over the time, I think, yeah, I definitely my body was out of order because my emotions were out of order. I was feeling incredibly attacked, defensive, that I would need to somehow protect myself from this woman. But I did had been working with, and this was a thank you to Leslie for that recommendation of the book, The Gentle Art of Blessing. And I'd started using that, blessing this woman, blessing the situation. And lo and behold, I've not received any further nasty emails or communication from this woman. At one stage, something had happened and other people were getting up in arms. You've got to go and talk to her. So we, one of the other people on the committee and I went and met with her. And Fran gently said to this woman, "You seem, angry." And the response was, "This is not anger, this is rage." That difference, and I could feel it. In fact, she used her fingers. This is rage. And I could feel in myself, I felt it viscerally. I felt this rage coming out of her. And was I felt very shaken by that. Wow. So I have been looking at this a bit more from the point of view of the work that Greg Braden's been doing. And I know that Bill's been reading The Divine Matrix at the moment, and so have I, and I've been listening to some of his work. For those of you who don't know, Greg Braden was a scientist who is now looking at how spirituality and science are coming together and the work that's been done in those areas. So that when you listen to his talk, he always brings in how science is catching up with the things that we have probably known in unity from our teachings, because while they say they're new thought, of course there have been ancient wisdoms, hasn't they, that have been brought to our attention. And so when he was Greg Braden was talking about how this interconnectedness that we have in the world, and what the scientists are now saying is that in between those spaces in between us, which we think look like empty spaces, aren't. That there's an energy, there's a field of energy, and they're not quite sure what to call it. And some of them are starting to talk about it in terms of it being a holographic energy. So think about that. You know about holograms, right? Do you remember those old bookmarks, the ones that were like three-dimensional, clear, and you think if they were really holograms, you would have been able to chop them up into the tiniest piece, and each piece would have had the whole in it, right? So what scientists are saying that when you take our whole world and all of us in it, we are this hologram. So whatever's happening in one place affects everything else, or reflects but affects as well. So if we make a change in one place, there will be something will happen there in the whole changes. So when you think about this in terms of, so what does this mean for us when we're looking at this whole idea of order? There's a minister that I know who used this idea. Often she would say, everything is in divine order. It's all in divine order. And part of me was going, oh, I don't know that it is. When I look at the fact that there's chaos and there's wars and there's poverty and injustice, that doesn't look like divine order to me. And so I puzzled this about, well, so how do I talk about this stuff? And actually, working with Greg Braden's work has really helped me to come to an understanding of it. So if we think about this in terms of we are all part of this whole, and that whatever we are experiencing affects the whole, then when we look at what's going on in the world, and we see the images on TV, hear it in our news, in the newspapers, and so on, it can be quite distressing. Do people feel that as well? Do they look at things, like what's happening in the Middle East and go, oh my God, that's terrible. And, sometimes we get sent prayers that, we hold those people in our hearts, and we want to bring comfort to them in some way. And what I'm understanding from the work that Greg Braden is talking about is that's only part of the picture, that we need to actually find a way of getting our heart okay with the whole. So that includes the perpetrators, the people who are inflicting the pain and the suffering. And then the third part of it is the witnessing, those of us who are witnessing what's going on. So he says this will help us get into a place where our prayers will be that powerful force. The most accelerated mind action is what Charles Fillmore talked about, didn't he? He said that they are. So, but we have to be in a place where we're not holding anger towards the perpetrators, where we're not saying, oh, they need to be punished or they need to suffer as they have put suffering on these other people. So and he says, how do we get there? If our prayers are going to be effective, we have to have a change inside of us. We have to have a way of clearing those places where we are judging. As Rumi says, beyond those places of right or wrong, there is a field. How do we get to that field? Greg Braden talks about the gift of blessing, that we can use the gift of blessing in these three areas where we bless those who are suffering, where we bless the people who have caused the suffering, and we bless those who are witnessing, those of us who are saying we can see it happening. And he said, because we can't leave out, they're all part of the equation. We're all part of this holograph. We can't be just focusing on one aspect. We have to do the whole. So it takes us through a process where we go, so we start to bless the people who are suffering, and bring to mind the images that we see on our TVs, or we have in mind when we think about what's happening, the devastation, the buildings that are just rubble, people's homes that are no longer homes, they're just a pile of rocks, where people have lost their lands, where they've lost their families, where people are grieving and they're angry and upset and they're beside themselves with grief. How do they come to some place? And how do we then come to some place of resolution? So we bless the suffering, and then we have a process, he says, where we need to bless those who have caused the suffering. Bless those who have destroyed their buildings, destroyed their homes, who have separated families, who have killed. We have to bless those as well. And then we have to bless ourselves as witnesses to this, as we have watched it. Because some of these things, when we see them, bring us to the very edge, don't they? Bring us to a point where we go, how can this be? How can we live with these things that are happening in the world that are pushing us in such a way where it all doesn't look like divine order? So the challenge for us is to bring order into ourselves, into our own bodies. The language of the universe, we know, is emotion, right? It's what we feel. And divine order is in our behind our navel area. And so when we think about these, some of these things do just hit us, don't they? Right in that area. And this part of this process is about, can we allow it to soften and move through us and move up into, and allow a warmth to come up into our whole being. He said one of the things that it does as we work through these three areas is that we might feel a warmth coming up through our bodies. And he said it may even fill your eyes with tears. And he said that is when the healing starts to happen. Because it's only in that place where we can come to some resolution within ourselves. It doesn't change what's happening out there, but what it's starting to do is change what's happening for us in here. And then, of course, it's going to affect the whole. There is going to be a shift. We know that there's been a shift in humanity over the last few years. I talked about this at one stage, that measurement that the kinesiologist David Hawkins did about calibrating where human consciousness was. So up until 1985, it was registering in the negative, registering on the things like fear and retribution and anger were highlighted. And 1985, there was a shift in humanity so that things like love, compassion, empathy were starting to emerge. And, I think about the work that Unity has done over the 150 years or so. Other New Thought, other organizations, the work that the Buddhists have done for eons now, makes a difference. There's something shifting in our consciousness for the world. So divine order, we can start to see maybe is coming into place. So the question that Greg Braden asked before we go into perhaps practicing that particular process of going through those three things is, are you willing? Are you willing at this stage to shift maybe from that place of anger, of wanting retribution, of thinking somebody's got to pay for this? How could it be? Are you willing to contemplate that if we can find that softness within ourselves, then we can start to move. Things may change. I've certainly had that experience, personally in this relationship with this woman. And I think I'm thinking, yeah, I think that we do have a place, a responsibility maybe to do this on a global scale. sometimes when I've looked at the news, I've thought it feels too huge, too too much to, how can we make a difference, or how can I make a difference? And yet I think that's exactly what we're here to do, isn't it? To make a difference, to do that work. So I want to invite you then to go into this place of being willing to bless, to give this gift of blessing, because at the end of it, if you've shifted, if there's been an energy shift, then you know that your prayer will already be answered. So if you are willing, then I invite you to start taking some deep breaths and settle into a place, a kind of meditative place. You take a deep breath, allow your stomach just to soften and poke out, if you like. You're taking a full breath, and then as you exhale, you can pull your stomach in and just push the air out. And then again, loosen your stomach too, because that allows your diaphragm to just take a deep breath in. And then again, push the air out, tightening your stomach a little. And take a couple more breaths like that. It's the yoga breathing. As you soften, as you inhale and then exhale more actively. Now bring to mind some of those images of destruction, of suffering. Let's focus on the Middle East. We've seen those images for a long time. The conflict that's been going on for a long, long time. And as you see those images of people maybe wandering the streets, digging amongst the rubble, looking for maybe family, friends, looking for the home that's no longer there. Bless those that suffer. And if you are able, you could say it aloud, I bless those that suffer. Bless those who have lost their homes. Bless those who have parted from their loved ones. Bless those who have lost their lands. Aloud, bless those who suffer. Now, the second part of the equation is to bless those who have caused the suffering. It takes a mighty, powerful, spiritually grounded person to do this. And so as you do it, know that you're not condoning. In no way are you excusing. All you're doing is acknowledging. As you acknowledge those who have caused the suffering, say out loud, I bless those who have caused the suffering. Remember, we're not condoning. I bless those who have caused the suffering.
Thank you.
And now the third part of the equation is to bless those of us who are the witnesses. As we have witnessed this, either personally or through our media, you can say out loud, I bless myself as the witness. And while in this time that we have together, you may not feel complete, you can do it over and over again and again. You bless those who are suffering and bless those who cause the suffering. And you bless the witness, yourself.